10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have ignition.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are starting today off in the VAB as we are getting our next shuttle flight set up and running. This is the docking adapter for our, I guess, our big interplanetary project that we have been working on in orbit for a very long while now. So we're actually going to use just a KS big crew tube for the docking adapter on the ship itself, but because I want to do an off-axis docking, so we're not just pushing the thing in circles, because I will inevitably be off angle for one reason or another, we're going to build in this in-bay docking adapter thing, which getting put on straight is not as easy as it would seem. And so we're also going to make sure we're taking up the correct guidance core. We're hoping to swap out a bunch of the cores that are already in situ for something else, as well as some tools. Gonna need the tools. Anyway, skipping out to our next task, it was to bring Crush, our little rescue boat from our last shuttle flight, back to Kauai Potato Station and get him refueled and refit and ready just in case he has to try to do it again. There will be some complications if that were to be the case. However, because of an unforeseen circumstance of tugboating this little docking adapter to and from everything, smart money would have been to try to tuck it back inside of the returning shuttle, although we saw how well that went with the little bit of cargo it was actually carrying. So it's good bet it would be lost anyway. But yeah, we're plotting our rendezvous. Of course, stock KSP nodes being what they are, it's just it's a little bit weird, and we kind of overestimate things by you know, a little bit, and we have this nice wiggle going on. I'm not sure if it's just overcorrecting and us not having any thrusters on that docking adapter and that extra weight at the tail causing us to, I don't know, pendulum around a bit more than anticipated, but we ended up having to take another couple of days worth of laps to let our closest approach node kind of fall in sync, and we actually do get a pretty good one that won't take too much fuel to try to dial in. Thankfully, yeah, something like 7.5 meters per second to take aim, and then it's going to be like 20 some odd meters per second to go ahead and perform the docking. So we're just going to touch this up on thrusters. There's a lot of just holding the thruster key, stuff like that, trying to get our docking really to come into alignment. This is, yeah, the most fun part of any stream, is watching me randomly hit a key to make a number go down so that we can get a solid rendezvous before attempting a docking. This one was particularly a little difficult to dial in. I think our relative inclination was just a little bit off axis, so that was kind of a thing, but we did eventually get it down to about 116 meters and made a nice solid approach to Kauai Potato Station. Now, here's the problem with the docking adapter while we're making our approach here, is that we needed that NASA standard port to dock with the shuttle, and everything on Kauai Potato Station and our Derpfish Crush here is the old Apollo standard, which until recently was our completely standard docking port used for absolutely everything all the time, no matter what. We don't have a NASA standard port anywhere on this station that we can just dock the adapter to. And there we were trying to eject it, and it ended up just redocking because we didn't pull away. So unfortunately, the decision has been made to eject the docking adapter, because other than like getting ourselves lined up with a docking port, pushing it towards the station, and then ejecting it and getting out of the way, and just kind of like hoping for the best, we have no real method of getting that docking adapter reattached to the station. I don't think we're going to try to recover it. We're probably just going to remove it from orbit and bring up another one at a later date. But Here's a successful docking, and then we'll move swiftly along to the heat bug. This is our returning Mars crew on a Chestnut M spacecraft, and thankfully, as I do before I jump to most vessels from anything, I hit Alt F12 and turned on Ignore Max Temperature because, yeah, everything was overheating for literally no reason whatsoever. This did create a very interesting circumstance because as we went into time warp, all those heat warnings disappeared. As you can see, our radiators have dialed down. Some of them are even operating at below 100%, which is fantastic. But it does have a few knock-on side effects that we'll discuss a little later on, but this particular heat bug has definitely been an issue for this particular spacecraft, really ever since we did its first Mars-Earth transfer burn. And so it's just been kind of a nice reminder that KSP is still full of bugs and glitches sometimes, and it really does really keep you on your toes. What I will note is that overheat did kind of affect our boil-off rate when it was, I don't know, I guess actually overheating. See, now we're not getting any heat warnings. So I assumed things were better, were solved, I guess would be the indicator. It turns out they were definitely not solved. And so I guess I'll tell you about the footage that isn't going to be in this episode currently. Is coming up here shortly after we do our resource balancing, and we've got our node all set up for our initial braking, our last terminal braking burn before we perform reentry. I actually brought the Alt F12 menu back up and turned Ignore Max Temperature off. And it had what I thought to be absolutely no adverse effect. And there you see me turning it back on because, well, we had to F9 when we got down into Earth's atmosphere, and, well, we separated the service module and got into Earth's atmosphere and realized that there was no ablator left on our heat shield. Yes, the infinite heat bug that comes out of nowhere had actually chewed up all of our ablator, and this spacecraft comes with a completely full ablator because we know we're going to be doing extra spicy reentries from, you know, Mars and Venus distances, and we really want that big wide heat shield with all of its ablator to help you know, dissipate all of that heat that we'll be going through while performing, I don't know, capture and reentry, hopefully in a single pass. So there's no chance that it was removed for any real reason other than infinite heat bug just ate all of our ablator. For what reason, I can only speculate. But yes, it was a thing. And it was just something we had to deal with. So now we're going to do with what we'll call the canonical re-entry, for which I will turn you gracefully over to old me. All right. Service module, separation. Arm shoots. Pull ourselves gracefully away. And get ourselves angled to retro, to which we should hold. And time warp it on in. Here we go. J2S beats the pants off everything for cost efficiency. Fair, but the HG3 is just a very nice performance upgrade. Current sadness is that the NK9 is not remotely cost effective. It'd be fun to fly mini N1s in the mid 60s, but it's stupidly expensive. Damn it. I've yet to get to a point in RP1 where I get to play with any of the NK series engines, really. Alright, let's bring this out of time warp. And y'all need to hold retro. And actually, we're just going to go ahead and set throttle. No, I don't want to do that because that's going to burn through our thruster fuel pretty quick. And if we're going to need it, we're going to need it. Especially if we need to make an adjustment to our periapsis on a second pass. J2 got its cost patch, so it's pretty cost effective. You don't think the yeah. I've seen some complaining that the HG3 is like a cheater engine. So I'm not surprised. But it makes sense that, you know, if you're going to use a paper engine, that you could speculate on cost, I guess. All right, let's bring up our heat shield data. Wow, why are we so... Why don't we have any ablator? What the F? This ablator should be full. Oh god, I guess it ablated off during all that time we spent with the heat warnings turned off. Because ablator is a function of heat. Is that what happened last time? Somebody go back and look at the old footage and see if when I opened that up initially, if that ablator was empty before it popped. Well, no, it's not going to pop because we've got infinite heat turned on. But that ablator should be full. And we never checked that when we turned off the Alt F12 menu. When we were overheating all the time. I'll say they're going to be fine. But that is really, really interesting that this thing would ablate because of the overheat bug. Holy hell! That is really interesting. Never, ever, ever have I flown this craft without a full ablator on that heat shield. We are captured. Oh, that is really, really interesting. Yeah, they're gonna live. I'm actually really tempted to reload and just check the ablator before we ever get to Earth to see if it's fully ablated. Because we turned off the Alt F12 ignore max temperature. Because I'm pretty sure that ablator was being used up in all of that time that we turned off max heat. Bet the burnt ablator messes with our center of mass? It probably does. Our mass is probably significantly shifted north than it would be normally. But it looks like we're going to come home this pass. That's really interesting that KSP's borked heat modeling would ablate the ablator. That is really, really, really interesting. That explains why we were seeing some boil off, but our DV was still so good. We shed a lot of weight through losing our ablator. Problem with RP engines is that they're from our world. In a world where you're doing much spaceflight, you'd assume they design them with different priorities. Yes, and iterate differently than we actually did, because instead of just rushing to get to the moon in the quickest way possible, they'd be thinking more about sustainability of spaceflight, reusability. A few other factors would go in there as well that would prompt different design choices along the way. Did we arm the chutes? I'm thinking we did. Down to 40 kilometers at 3.7 kilometers per second. Not too terrible. Where are we coming home? Oh, hey, it looks like we are going to land in the rainforest. Welcome to Colombia. This discussion is why procedural engines are... Yes, I really wish that RO would go to a 100% procedural engines model instead of real engines, because I think it provides a lot more flexibility. All right, Calvin. Have a good evening. I hope to see you streaming in a bit. Well, we will see you streaming in a bit, I suppose. So, good night and good luck. Welcome to the jungle. Not gonna sing AC/DC tonight. It just makes so much more sense for a proc engine model, where you can make an engine and like get it to spec and then put it into production, and it becomes like a usable part, instead of having to generate a procedural engine for every vehicle that you have. Yeah, I've seen it mentioned out there in the wilderness for a while, so I really hope it just yes, he did. Guns N' Roses, my bad. Yeah, you're right. I am terrible at glam rock. Hides. Okay, so let's get ourselves down to 10k and make sure those chutes pop, which I think it's set to 10 kilometers. I'm not sure. They might be lower. Thunder. Oh, wow, 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 wow. Alright, we got drogues. Hooray! It looks like our crew is coming home just fine. I was way off on my estimation, but then again, we were probably 4 or 5 tons lighter because of this heat shield discrepancy. No warnings on the temp gauges. Guns N' Roses, brah. So Axl Rose has this interesting thing with my hometown. There's drogue cut and primary deploy. It's like we have a good primary shoot deploy, and it's going to be an interesting landing here in the trees. Set throttle to full, just burn off as much of this thruster fuel as we can. Parting like landing capsules in the rainforest, you can snag your canopy in the canopy. Gavril's home from 35 orbits and an updated 35 hours in orbit and an updated Mercury. Does that include more legroom? Because I would not want to do that. Just me personally, and not liking confined spaces. It does not. Typical. So typical. Okay, well, they'll be on the ground in about 5 or 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and physics warp through some of this, at least until we get close to ground. We'll be watching that altitude true. 300 meters mark. 200. 100. Still descending a little faster than I'd like. Is that a primary deploy? Yeah, we're down to 5.2 meters per second. So yeah, I guess those last bits of emergency chutes have done their thing. 30 meters. Oh, this one's going to kind of hurt. 5.2 meters per second is a bit faster than I'd like. But our crew is home safe. Congratulations. Mars crew 5? Yeah, probably 5. Anyway, moving swiftly along, it is now time to launch our docking adapter and our second supply pod for our big orbital project, which I should probably start thinking of an official name for. If you want to suggest something, go ahead, but we're not going to make anything official for a good long while now, and maybe we should get the entire schematics laid out before we start trying to decide what we're going to name things. Anyway, pretty standard SKS flight going up today on this nice balmy Florida evening. Diane Bowman at the flight stick today, taking her dad Lee Bowman's place. Alan Elliott and Victoria Bell make up the rest of the crew as per usual. I think there are lowest ranking, but probably have the most flight patches of any of our Kerbals at the moment, at least our active ones. We've got some retirees just kind of hanging around the Space Center that are not doing much, but have probably flown a couple of hundred times in their own right. Some of them have been around for most of the space program. Anyway, so we are, again, trying to match our relative inclination. We decided not to do a belly roll. I was actually running really short on time when we went to go ahead and try to get this launch off the ground and at least into orbit. We will not be doing rendezvous or docking today, just getting this thing in orbit and getting the stage set for, I guess, next episode. So that's what you have to look forward to after all of the adventures today. It seemed maybe we should just, you know, finish this off with a nice, relaxing, easy float to orbit on a shuttle that is operating drastically underneath its rated tonnage. You can see we got 23 seconds and a full kilometer per second left in that EFT before we just go ahead and jettison it off anyway. We'll get the cargo bay opened up and get things get our fuel cells operating. So hopefully we shouldn't be seeing the big battery drain like we did last flight. So at least we got that going for us. But yeah, we're gonna leave them on orbit. We have another 3 Kerbal to low Earth orbit contract that will need fulfilling. That's what this crew is yet again doing, generating all the money for our space program right now, because, well, that's it is what it is. But anyway, we'll get around to rendezvous and docking next episode. That's going to do it for this one, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.